Thanks for joining us. I'm Tony Carvajal, Executive Vice President of Florida TaxWatch. And you know that we serve as the eyes and ears of Florida's taxpayers, and that often means that we're dealing with budget issues and policy and regulations, but we also deal with other questions in the community and return on investment. And we've been hearing a lot about businesses struggling to fill open jobs. At the same time, we're looking at research that clearly points out that there's a hiring strategy that people can be using right now that consistently and over time has shown, by the way, that you can receive higher revenues, better profits, employee and customer satisfaction. And that strategy, by the way, is disability employment. And joining me today is actually a friend of mine who knows a lot about that space, and that's Allison Chase. Allison is the president and CEO of the Able Trust, and appreciate you joining me today.
Thank you for having me today, Tony. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
So, Allison, a lot of times when people think about disability, they often think about the social programs and all the things that come with it. But you and I know very well that the greatest investment that people can make is actually independence and have a job. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And that's a little about what Able Trust deals with. So let's start with, tell me about Able Trust.
Okay. So the Able Trust has been in operation for 31 years. We are considered a direct support organization to the vocational rehabilitation program here in Florida. So 31 years ago, it was 1990, the Americans with Disabilities Act was being enacted then. And at the same time, our legislature had the wisdom to say there's not enough resources in the state for getting people with disabilities to work. So they created us to support vocational rehabilitation, to create resources, to create collaborations and relationships, and particularly relationships with businesses. Because we know when businesses invest in disability inclusion, it's good for the entire economy.
So I think I remember that you don't work directly with individuals in that process, but you actually make businesses better and connect people to jobs and with the agencies.
That's right. So to steal a term that you've used with us before, we consider ourselves the connective tissue.
Yeah.
So we've got that 30,000 foot view. We have the relationships. We operate in every county in every state. We are a statewide organization. We have done grant making with local nonprofits who work with people with disabilities. But really, our focus is trying to support businesses. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is a huge part of the conversation right now. And we want to make sure that disability is a part of that conversation. Because as you've already said, we know that hiring people with disabilities is the right decision, but it's also a good business decision.
Tell me more about that. I mean, because I found that interesting. Higher profits, higher return. Wow.
Right.
How does that work?
Right. So there have been some studies that have shown that businesses that hire individuals with disabilities can recognize 28% higher revenues, double their net income, and 20% higher profit margins. Yeah. So it's really about the bottom line, but also they're gaining workers that are reliable, dependable, they're skilled. So one of the things that we like to talk about to really kind of make people see the full picture is that 1 in 4 Americans are living with a disability. And 70% of those individuals are living with an invisible disability. So most of us, if you're not working in this world, you're not familiar with disability, we have a very small picture of what an individual with a disability looks like. And although that may be true, we know that individuals with disabilities have as broad a spectrum of interests, skills, and abilities as the rest of the population. And we really want to help businesses recognize that, because we know when they hire people with disabilities, they get a good worker, but they also strengthen their workforce. The same study that I was quoting, the bottom line revenue, has also shown that the general population wants to shop. They want to do business where it looks like the general population, and that includes people with disabilities.
Yeah, so you get higher returns because people are focused on the work and they're consistent in their job, they're retained, and the customers like it. I want to dive into something that's really always interested me. This term disability kind of is misleading. You talk about visible and invisible disabilities, and I'll go ahead and confess, you know that I have reading challenges and I would fall into that invisible category. There's a lot of people like that in the workforce. So folks are probably already working with individuals with disability, I guess.
Absolutely. I mean, when you think about that number, 1 in 4 Americans, of course, most businesses already have people on their workforce that have a disability. They just may not have chosen to disclose. One of the things that we know about people with disabilities is that they're pretty innovative and creative because they're dealing with challenges every day. I mean, certainly, as you've disclosed, you have some reading issues, but I mean, look at the job that you're in. I mean, you have to read volumes and volumes of paper. So we know that people with disabilities know what they need in order to be successful. So, and we know that they're already on the workforce, but we also know that there are a lot that are not. There is a large gap between workforce participation of people with disabilities and the general population, which has hovered around 45%. So 35% of people with disabilities who want to work are working. And for the general population, that's around 75%. So that's a 40% gap. And
Wow.
it depending by which county here in Florida, it waffles a little bit. But that's been a number that's been consistent for over 50 years. So we know that there's a lot of work to be done, but we also know there's a lot of benefit that businesses, particularly in the climate that we're in right now, can realize.
So people are looking for good, talented folks, individuals that want to work. And we hear all the time that they're struggling to find those positions. And you're talking about individuals who want to work, who can't find those jobs. So how do we connect those two populations? Any advice or ideas?
Absolutely. So there's lots of different things. And that's where, that connective tissue role comes in for us. So we want to help businesses who are interested in learning more about it, or may also be at the point of, I'm ready to hire somebody. So we have a network of community service providers that we've worked with. We, as I've said, we are the direct support organization to the state vocational rehabilitation program. They've got business consultants all throughout the state who are on the ready, to help a business go through the different processes that it might take. It might be completely easy, but it also might require some accommodations. And those business consultants are the professionals. And that's where our role is, to help make those connections.
So everybody doesn't have to go through VR. I actually noticed that I went to your website and we were looking at this while we were waiting. It's abletrust.org. And you have some resources and some tools on there that businesses can use for finding things. Tell me more about that. We do.
So we have a toolkit. So as you said, if you go to our website, abletrust.org, there is a section that is for businesses. And just select that and it will take you to a wealth of resources from, I just want to learn more about this, why it might be good for me, all the way to I'm ready to hire somebody, and all of the things in between. How do I get my workplace ready to hire somebody with a disability? Because it is a culture issue. And I think that that's really one of the greatest things that has come out of the DEI movement this past year and a half, is realizing that we have to change the way that we do work. And people with disabilities are ready for that. They, as I've already said, they have to oftentimes be flexible and innovative, and our workforces are doing that now. I mean, look at all the things that we've been able to change, recognizing that we don't necessarily have to be in an office, and oftentimes that's a really great, easy accommodation for a person with a disability.
Well, there's another word that actually jumps out, accommodation. So, I probably have talked to businesses, and one of the big concerns that they would have if they're thinking about disabilities is the risks or what an accommodation is. But tell me a little bit more about how they might handle something like that.
So the first thing that I think is important to know is that businesses don't have to have all the answers. People with disabilities know what they need. So use them as the experts. They're the ones that can tell you, I need to do this a little bit differently, or, maybe I just need a stand to raise something up. And so that's a great example of most accommodations cost very little. The majority of accommodations cost less than $500, with a lot of them costing nothing. Just moving something from one side of the desk to the other, or allowing somebody to work from home, like we were just talking about through the pandemic. That's been a really great way to be more accommodating and inclusive of people with disabilities.
So lower risks, it's easy to accommodate, folks want to work. Why wouldn't we do this? I mean, this is a great thing going forward.
So that's a great question. And also one that's, I think, confounds a lot of people in this space, because as you know, we did a survey last summer of over 600 Florida businesses, 85% of which said, yes, I'm open to hiring a person with a disability. 60-something% said, yes, in the last 3 years, I've hired somebody with a disability. There's a lot of evidence that employers say that they want to do it, but why is that gap not closing? So there's an interesting research study that was done by the National Institute of Disability Rehab Research. And they say that oftentimes awareness is just not enough. So as you've said, October is Disability Employment Awareness. And awareness is important. And, having people have these conversations and say, yes, of course I support hiring people with disabilities, but it's then that translation into action. And this research, what they postulate is that awareness isn't enough. You have to have actual day-to-day kind of interaction. So one of the things that we want to make sure that businesses have the opportunity just to be with people with disabilities, and there's lots of different ways to do that. So Disability Employment Awareness Month also contains Disability Mentoring Day. So
you
lot
can
of
just one time interact with them or a longer time?
no, I think longer time.
Okay.
So to be able to invite people with disabilities or a person with a disability that might be interested in your industry, people with disabilities need that opportunity too, to be able to explore, but also for businesses to be able to have those interactions and learn, hey, this is really not what I had pictured in my mind.
I love October, and I remember your efforts last year with Disability Employment Awareness Month. And you had mentoring programs and businesses talking about what they did. You had those on your website. You'll probably have a few of those. But one thing really stuck out to me from last year's conversation, and that was it's not just that the businesses want to hire them to diversify their workforce. Employees actually want that too.
Yes.
We've entered a world where we want to be part of the change
Right.
that we want to see, and employees really like working with
Absolutely.
all different types of people.
Yes, I mean, we want to work in a place that reflects the rest of the world, and when we have diversity in our workforces, we have more creativity, innovation, team building. It's oftentimes challenges us to think in different ways, to learn from each other. And people with disabilities, like I mentioned earlier, most of them, they deal with different barriers every day and have to be innovative and use critical thinking skills to overcome those barriers. And that's golden for businesses. One of the things that heard in a conversation earlier this week with a business is I just need to find somebody who's willing to work. I can train them, I can bring them on and, help them be a part of our culture, but I just want somebody that's willing to work. And we've got a lot of people with disabilities that are.
Finding people who are willing to work and making it a good place for them to work also benefits everybody else. So, we got to get past this stereotype of disability and what that all means. But here's what it means in practically speaking when you're looking at somebody like me. These glasses are not for show. It's not just to make me look good. If I make a business more accessible from a vision perspective, it benefits you and it benefits our customers.
Absolutely. Yeah, that whole universal design. So I use the example in our office building. We have one of the, low touch things that opens the door. I use it all the time. So that's just one small example of.
And that's an accommodation that came from the world of disability.
Right. And so, when it's good for one person, it's usually good for everybody. It makes things easier. So that's another thing that I think oftentimes gets lost in that whole fear of accommodation, that we're talking about making things better for everybody.
And there's lots of things businesses can do, even if they're not hiring.
Yes.
I mean, we were talking about making websites easier to access for individuals. Not only is it the law that you need to do that, but it's actually good for business too. Not too hard to do.
Right. No, not hard at all. Just simple things that help individuals who may have a reading issue, who may have a visual impairment, to be able to understand what they're getting from your website.
So it does bring up one other question. What if I'm not hiring right now? Can I still do something to support this disability employment movement?
Absolutely. We have a high school career exploration program for students with disabilities all throughout the state in 43 locations, every major metropolitan area and a lot of rural areas. And that is what that program is all about, is making those connections with businesses. I think that the biggest thing is just being able to share the knowledge. We have such a growing economy and growing population here in the state that there's going to be more and more need to look at diverse populations as the solution for the workforce. So it doesn't have to be, an immediate hire. But just do things to help get that familiarity and to help train the next generation so that they're what you need. So that, we hear that a lot, that employer, not just for people with disabilities, but for the general population, students are coming out of school and it's not the skills that the businesses need. So we invite you to help us make sure that they're getting the skills that you
Yeah, and that genuine nature. So it's not just about one employee, it's all employees, it's your customers, it's the broader commitment to doing the right thing.
right.
A lot of our members and the businesses that you deal with, that is one of their commitments. So there's lots more that we can talk about, but folks can go to your website,
Yes.
abletrust.org, and find out more about Disability Employment Month. Let's wrap this up a little bit by telling people, giving people some advice. If we were talking about, here's what you can do after you listen to this if you want to get engaged, what would you tell them?
So I would say go to our website, abletrust.org, peruse that, but call us. Our phone number is on the website. We want to talk to businesses. We want to hear what questions and concerns, because it makes us better, makes us be able to support businesses when we understand the challenges that they're facing, the questions that they have. And the other thing that's on the website that I think would be most helpful to businesses is we've got some best practices or promising practices from other businesses where they've told their story. I was scared, this didn't make sense to me, but this is what the light switch moment was for me, and this is the experience that we've had. So we have those stories there. And as you and I know, business to business learning is one of the most powerful tools for strengthening our economy. And that's what we want to do, is bring businesses together to be able to learn from each other. And that's on our website as well.
So some things that are standing out to me from this conversation: it improves our bottom line. There are people who want to work. And for those of you who are looking for folks, this is a great population. By the way, you're probably already working with somebody with a disability, because 1 in 4 individuals, individuals with disabilities stay at their jobs longer. And there are resources and other people that guide us through all these things. I mean, this is a slam dunk. People should really be engaging with
Absolutely. So as we've said, most businesses already have people on their staff that have a disability that maybe have not disclosed. How do you help create that culture where people feel comfortable disclosing their disability, they feel accepted, they feel valued? We want to learn from that. So I think that that's probably one of the best ways to get started, is recognize you've got people on your staff already with disabilities, and let us help you learn how to support them.
Allison, this has been great conversation. I hope that people do engage a little bit more, not only in employment of individuals with disabilities, but in a broader context, thinking about what they can do to help their customers, to help their employees, and their bottom line by engaging with a more diverse population. And diversity in this case absolutely means disability too. So Allison Chase with the Able Trust, you can reach her or find out how to contact her at theabletrust.org. I'm Tony Carvajal. You can reach us at Florida Tax Watch, and that's floridataxwatch.org. And if you want to know a little bit more about my experience, Allison's experience, or want to continue this conversation in some way, just reach out to us. This is something that's not only personal to us, but important for the future of our state. So Allison, thanks for joining me.
Thanks so much, Tony.